What does God get out of giving us free will to run amok and make a mess out of things?
I've asked God that question many times myself, Michael. Why? If there really is a God, why has it been such a mess for hundreds of thousands of years? Why can't we solve the biggest problem in the world today? And what is stopping us? Because we understand God to be judging, condemning, and punishing, we choose to be judging, condemning, and punishing with each other. So I want to ask a simple question. Is it just possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything?
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered what's going on in the world and how in the world to change things, then do we have the God Solution show for you. Today I'll be talking with Neale Donald Walsch, the runaway New York Times #1 bestseller of the Conversations with God series, about my new favorite, most profound, and most important book I have perhaps ever read, The God Solution. And that's just what I want to talk with him about one simple question whose answer will change everything, and life will never be the same on planet Earth. So welcome back to the show, Neale. Are you ready to shine?
Thank you, Michael. It's lovely to be here, and thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I think we're all ready to shine any moment that we are alive. We just simply don't always know it.
I couldn't agree more, Anamighty. Woohoo! So before we dive right into things, and I know I'm not going to get off the hook for saying this, but let me say this, Neale, and I know you don't need to hear this, but you are right, you are right, you are right. With that said, what is the fair question, or the biggest question in the world we get to ask today?
Why can't we solve the biggest problem in the world today? And what is stopping us?
And if a benevolent higher power exists, why isn't life on Earth any better?
That's a very good question. I've asked God that question many times myself, Michael. Why? Why? If there really is a God, why is the world such a mess? And frankly, why has it been such a mess for hundreds of thousands of years? Not just recently, but from the beginning of recorded history. And when I asked God, she said, Neale, it's really very simple. If I wanted to create a species of minions, of subjects who merely needed to do what I command them to do and everything would be okay, then life would be easier on your planet, I'm sure. But what I really chose to do was to create a species, in fact, many civilizations throughout the cosmos, in which all the members of that species, all the sentient beings, had free choice, were given free will, and were given the power as well, the ability to create their own reality, collectively and to some degree individually. And so that was my greatest joy, was to give you the power to change and to create your own reality. So I said to God, but why couldn't you have made it a little easier? And God said to me, why couldn't you have made it a little easier? And I said, no, you don't know. You have all the answers. And God said, no, you have all the answers. And I said to God, but you are the one who has the power. And God said to me, but you are the one who has the power. You see, you were created in the image and likeness of God, and you simply don't believe that. So you've allowed yourself to imagine that there's little or nothing you can do about the way life is being expressed and experienced and created by you, by your civilization on this planet, but just the opposite is true. So when you embrace and finally accept your own identity, that is, when you step into who you really are, you will see that life will change on the earth, but not until then.
Whew. I might go New Yorker on you, and I'm not a New Yorker, Neale. What does she get out of it? What does she get out of giving us free will to run amok and make a mess out of things?
Nothing. God doesn't do things to get something out of it. God needs to get nothing out of it because God is all there could possibly be. So we have nothing we could offer or give to God because God is all that we could possibly offer or give him. So there is nothing that God needs from us. This is one of the beliefs that we have a difficult time as a species embracing. We can't imagine a God who needs nothing, much less a God who demands and requires nothing. Much less can we imagine a God who will not punish us if we don't give God what we imagine that God needs and requires. Because we don't think that we are made in the image and likeness of God. We think that God is made in the image and likeness of us. Therefore, if we need certain things in order for us to be happy, and if we punish each other routinely in a wide variety of ways, if we don't get what we think we need, then God must do the same thing, since God is made in the image and likeness of man, not the other way around. So we have created a deity who judges, condemns, and punishes.
And I'm going to go to my own life for a second. So I grew up in a very challenged household. And I learned that if I abused, attacked, belittled, berated myself before my mom would, I felt safer. And that actually sounds a little bit like planet Earth. If we attack ourselves before the deity attacks us, somehow we're better off.
Or at least we can escape the worst attack of all. So yes, I agree that is a point of view held by many members of our species, for sure. And we interact with each other on a personal level in much the same way.
So let's go to the biggest problem here. I want to understand 85% of people on this planet believe in a God.
Yes, that's something that not many people really know, but sociologists have taken surveys here in the past 5 or 7 years in virtually, Michael, every nation on the earth. And they went out into the field with their clipboards, and talked to regular people on the street. And they asked a single, simple question. It wasn't a big, long survey. They just asked a simple question. Do you believe in a higher power? And you're correct. 85% of the respondents said, yes, they believe in a higher power. So we have this really interesting situation on our planet, Michael, where 85% of the people believe in a higher power. We all agree that there is such a thing. There's more going on here than meets the eye. There's something larger that's occurring. But we can't agree about that higher power. We can't seem to come to an agreement on what it is, what it wants, if anything, what, if anything, it will do if it does not get what it wants, and how we can use, if we can, that power that we say the higher power is. So we can't seem to come to an agreement on those key questions, the result of which is we've created over 4,200 individual religions or faith traditions on this planet, operating right now on this very day. Each of those 4,000 religious traditions teaching about God in a somewhat different way that causes them to be not a duplicate of the other 4,000 religions. Each religion with its own doctrines, its own dogmas, its own ideas, its own truths.
The word that comes to me, and I want to get into what is the God dilemma, but the word that comes to me, and I can't believe I'm going to use it, is infantile or immature. That there is a lack of maturity or understanding of what God could be because of our anthropomorphism. I can't even pronounce that word. Our ability to make God like us rather than us like God. That is getting us in a lot of hot water. What does, Neale, our understanding of God have to do with anything or everything? You would think if 85% of people believed in a higher power, we'd be living in Shangri-La.
Well, it depends on what we believe about that higher power. See, here's the deal. Most of the world's 4,000 religions have taught us that we should emulate, that is, we should model our behavior on what we understand God's behavior to be. We should seek to be God-like or act divinely, if it's at all possible, or at least move in that direction. So we have an entire civilization trying to imitate, if you please, trying to model the behaviors that we understand God to be using on us. Therefore, because we understand God to be judging, condemning, and punishing, we choose to be judging, condemning, and punishing with each other. We think quite logically, if it's good enough for God, it's good enough for us. So it's not a mistake, nor is it happenstance, that most of the world's legal systems are actually based on church law. At the beginning, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, much of the legal systems in the countries of the world were based on law of the church at that time. And that's even true to some degree to this day. There are countries on earth right now that base their legal system and legal requirements. For instance, there are certain Muslim nations, as an example, that are basing their present day law on the Sharia, that is, the teachings of the Islamic faith. So this is not a new tradition. It's been a tradition for hundreds and thousands of years. At the beginning of the legal system, it was largely the law that was laid down by the Catholic Church that became the law of the land in many, many nations of the world. So we're basing our entire legal system, our entire system of so-called justice, on what we understand God's system of justice to be. But I've asked an interesting question with my writing, and I even actually wrote a book at one point with the title, God's Message to the World, : You've got me all wrong. So I want to ask a simple question. Is it possible? Is it just possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything?
As above, so below. As within, so without. Our concepts of God are not just affecting our outer reality. We are then judging and condemning, trying and convicting ourselves on the inside as well. And I believe it's that chaos internally that is having that ripple effect on the entire world. So how are we misunderstanding God? And what, at the end of the day, at the top of the pyramid of mysticism, whatever tradition, whatever spirituality, what really is God, Neale? Or what is this new understanding we need to have of God?
How we're misunderstanding God is by virtue of our immaturity, our emotional, psychological, and yes, our spiritual immaturity. We're a very young species, really. Someone put the data together a few years ago. I'm really sorry that I can't recall the exact name of these authors, but I pulled out this information from a book about 8 or 9 years ago. It was written in that book that if you took the age of the Earth and overlaid it on a calendar year, just to give us a reference that we could grasp and deal with. Let's call that the Earth was born or created, came into being on the 1st of January. And let's call today December 31st. On that scale, the first entities, the first form of life at all on this planet, cellular life, did not appear until February of that year on that scale. The life as we know it, that is, birds in the sky, fish in the sea, animal life did not appear until the end of November. Humanoids did not walk on this planet. I mean, dinosaurs were still roaming around on December 5th and didn't disappear until December 25th on that scale. Humanoids, that is, mammals that walked on two legs upright, did not appear until December the 31st. And the entirety of human history took place in the last 60 seconds of the year on that scale. That's how young we are compared to the planet that we're living on. Forget about the age of the cosmos. So we're a very, very young species, just now beginning to emerge from our own, to use your word of a few moments ago, infantile days. And just now beginning to emerge, not even completely emerged, but beginning to move away from our own infantile behaviors. And so that's when you ask the question, how have we come to this misunderstanding? That's how. The same way a 3 or a 2-year-old child would simply not understand, advanced mathematics or higher truths of life in any form at any level. Now, the solution is for us to discontinue how we have been trying to solve our problems, Michael. The challenge on the earth, as I see it, is that we've been trying to solve the world's problems at every level, except the level at which the problems exist. We've been trying what I call behavior modification, popularly called behavior mod. If we can just get each other to stop acting the way we're acting, we could have a better life. But the solution is not in behavior mod, because you're not going to change people's behaviors until you do what? Change people's beliefs. Because our behaviors are based on our beliefs. So what we need to engage in here is belief mod. If you please, we have to modify our fundamental beliefs about who we are, why we're here, who and what this thing we call God is, what it in fact wants, whether we can in fact use that higher power in any constructive way in our own interactions day to day, and the purpose of all of life. Now, I proposed in the book called The God Solution that we simply come up with a new definition of God. Why don't we call God simply pure love? Why do we give God a 2-word definition and step away from all of these long-winded explanations of the higher power? Supposing we simply called God pure love. Now, I have to tell you, my friend, that when I make this statement in front of an audience, somebody inevitably will get up in the back of the room, usually a guy. He'll say with folded arms, "Oh, Neale, really? We've been listening to you for 20 minutes for you to tell us that God is love? We all know that God is love. Even the religions that don't agree on every item of doctrine would agree that God is love." And I have to say to them, wait a minute. I didn't say God is love. I said God is pure love. And there's a difference. All right, the guy in the back of the room will say, "What's the difference?" And I have to tell him. The difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. So the question, my friend, in the back of the room is, can you accept the notion that it might be true that our deity asks nothing and needs nothing and requires nothing of us to continue flowing goodness to us? And then that person will often say, "So your God is flowing goodness to us, then why is the world such a mess?" And my answer is because we're not using the goodness that God is flowing to us. We're not using the power that God has invested in all of us. We're ignoring our own ability to create our collective reality. But if we were to use our ability to manifest collectively what we choose to experience on the earth, our life on this planet could change virtually overnight. But it begins with interacting with each other in the new way that we understand God to be interacting with us. That is, without needing, expecting, requiring, or demanding anything in return from each other. We can't even do that with people we love deeply, that live in our own home, that live in our own house. We have expectations that have to be met. After all, we have needs. We have emotional needs. So when we fall in love with someone, we say, "I really love you very much. But, let's do what nations do with nations. Let's have a trade deal. I'll tell you what, I'll trade you what I've got, and you trade me what you've got to offer this relationship. We'll trade each other. And on Valentine's Day, I'll find the perfect Valentine's card. My dearest, my beloved, my wonderful, I trade you very much. And I will never stop trading you. I will trade you until the end of time. But if you stop trading me, if you don't give me what I expected you to give me in this relationship, the deal is off. We're done. Because love is a quid pro quo.
Ooh, ow. I've got my baby in the other room, 5 weeks, 5 days old. Can you imagine, Neale, if I treated her with a quid pro quo pro? You think I'm going to change your diaper? What have you done for me today?
Fortunately, we have most human beings, not all, but I'm going to say the majority of human beings have learned how to interact with pure love, with infants like that, with 5-day-old or 5-week-old infants. And some human beings interact with pure love with other members of the animal kingdom, their favorite pet, or maybe their beloved stallion, the horse out back in the field, or whoever.
I've got a rooster upstairs. If we were doing a meditation, I would bring him down for the meditation. I carry him in my arms out of pure love.
Yes, but make sure that you don't deny, because it's been said that when the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me. So we have to be very careful that we don't deny what it is we think we understand. And so what we are invited to do is to begin practicing in our very own homes, to be able to say to the person on the other pillow, you know what? I love you no matter what. I love you like I love my 5-week-old. I need nothing from you in return for the love that I choose to give you, because my bliss is experienced in the flow of my love to you.
Now we're talking about, no other way to put it, becoming the sun. The sun shines on the whole world without any request in return, and my guess is that the belief is the sun radiates pure joy, love, and happiness from giving her light and her love without anything in return.
That's my understanding, but you could be wrong, in which case the sun will burn you to death and you'll wind up in the everlasting fires of hell. So you'd better be right about that. You know, they put Galileo under house arrest because he dared to say in 1604 that the earth revolves around the sun. And the church taught that the sun revolves around the earth. Hard as it is for us to believe today, the church taught for hundreds of years that the sun revolved around the earth, because it was the church's teaching that this planet and its people were the highest creations of God. And so, of course, the sun revolved around the earth. The earth was the center of the universe. And when Galileo proved different, they condemned him and put him under house arrest, where he died under house arrest.
So it gets to a very key concept, and I'm guessing Galileo was one. What does it mean to become an ideas hero, and why is that so important?
An idea hero is someone who is willing to embrace, to adopt, to live into, to stand for, and even to share with others an idea that she knows ahead of time that the largest number of people are going to disagree with. If you know ahead of time that most people are going to disagree with you, and they will marginalize you, trivialize you, ridicule you, and may even punish you, and you still stand for the idea that you understand to be true, that makes you an idea hero. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is a perfect example in more modern times of an idea hero. Galileo is another example of an idea hero, and Gloria Steinem is another example of an idea hero. Idea heroes who said, wait a minute, can we just hold the horse? Hold your horses just a minute here, just 1 second. Can we just stop moving in the direction in which we're moving and consider the possibility that we might be wrong about this?
By that, would you consider yourself an idea hero?
I would consider myself a messenger. And yes, I don't like to lay platitudes on myself, but I'm probably the greatest idea hero of all time and the most handsome one as well.
Well, I could not agree more, except for myself. With that said, I love this question your wife Em asked when you began to write chapter 4. Do you remember what she asked you?
Sure, yeah. We should explain to the people who haven't read the book that as I was writing this book, The God Solution, my wife, who understood what I was doing, we naturally, we share, our lives with each other fully. And she knew I was involved in the middle of that book, but she came and I discussed the book with her as it has gotten to that point. And I was in chapter 4, and you're right. She walked into the room and she said, wouldn't it be interesting if everybody could create their own religion? Well, what do you think that the religion that people would create would be like? And how would they want their religion to be? And what would their religion teach? I said, and I was staring out the window for 20 minutes. I thought, what an interesting notion. What an interesting idea. So I actually put it into the book. And I explained in the book that my wife just walked into the room and she asked me this question. So I invited everybody who's reading the book. If you could create your own religion, and if you knew that everyone on earth was going to be invited to follow the teachings of that religion, what would your religion teach? What would be its doctrine? What would be its dogma? What would be its chief beliefs? Fascinating question that I placed before the reader of the book as an exercise.
So going along those lines, what does pure love mean to you in dogma, in doctrine, in practice?
It means that I flow love to those whose lives I touch without expecting or requiring anything in return. It means something as simple as that. But there are practical ways to apply that. For instance, I have a mantra that I say to myself the first time that I see anybody on any particular day. It might be, in fact, my beloved on the pillow next to me, or it could be a family member across the room, or a neighbor across the street, or a stranger behind the counter at the coffee shop downtown. But the first time I see any one of those people on any given day, I have a mantra that I say. I don't say it out loud, of course, because no one would understand. I would, in fact, be widely misunderstood. But I do say it in my own mind. This is my mantra the first time I see anyone on any given day. I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better today for my having passed through it. I promise you.
So, from a spiritual point of view, that is you as God. From a good Jewish upbringing point of view, that's a lot of chutzpah.
It is. It is. It absolutely is. Some people, which is why I don't say it out loud, but some people would say, in fact, by whose authority are you acting like this? Or to put it in more contemporary terms, who the hell do you think you are? Which is, of course, the question that my father asked me from the time I was 14. That was a little joke, Michael. My father, from the time I was 14, would walk around the house saying to me, who the hell do you think you are anyway? Not realizing he was asking me the quintessential question of all time.
But it's curious, Neale. It's curious because I don't know too much about your path. But I know there's a story of a vase I'd like you to share. And then there is you who, please forgive me, Neale, my interpretation is, why me, God? and all of your conversations with God work, why the hell me? There is maybe the term is reluctance in you for a while. You are cracked wide open right now. My friend, you are cracked so far open, it is beyond unbelievable. But I know it's been a journey to get here. And I'm very curious how that dynamic of mom, dad was for you. But maybe you could start with sharing what happened with a vase one day when you're like 8 or 9.
Well, my mother had a family heirloom that she had inherited from her mother, who had inherited it from her mother, who had gotten it from her mother, and on through the generations. So when it came to my mother, she was told by her mother, this has been in the family for gosh knows how long, hundreds of years, from the old country. So my mother, had it on the top of the mantelpiece in the fireplace. And she told all of us children, don't touch the vase. Just let it be up there. It's a beautiful, it's a family heirloom. Don't touch the vase. So, of course, when I was 9 years old, I couldn't resist the temptation. I wanted to know what made it so incredibly special that we weren't even allowed to touch it. So I got up on a little stool that I found, and I maybe just high enough to reach the vase. And I did what I knew I shouldn't do. I grabbed the vase to take a closer look at it. I just wanted to see what made it so special. Well, of course, everyone knows how the story ends. I dropped the vase, and it crashed into a gazillion pieces. My mother rushed in from the kitchen where she had been, knowing exactly what happened. And she came in, she looked at the vase on the floor. Her face blanched. Then she looked at me. She saw the look on my face, utter disappointment in myself and fear what was going to happen next. How could I have done it? I knew better. And I knew I didn't want to hurt her. I knew I had hurt her terribly. And I didn't know what kind of response I was going to get. How can I even live through this moment? And my mother got down to my level. She got down on her haunches, gave me a little kiss, held my face in her hands. She said, sweetheart, that's a vase. And you are my son. You are my child. And I love you more than anything in this world, including that. Go outside and play. And she gave me the sweetest kiss I've ever had in my life. She just gave me a little kiss on the cheek, sent me outside to play, as if nothing had happened at all. And at some deep level, I realized that I had learned then what I was told almost 50 years later in my conversations with God. My mother understood perfect love, needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. She refused to allow me to feel horrible about destroying the family heirloom. She chose what was more valuable to her, the heirloom or my broken heart. And she refused to not heal my broken heart. So she did right there on the spot and taught me a lesson that I've, of course, remembered all my life.
Thank you, Neale. Thank you. How do we choose? She clearly chose pure love. How do we choose to express pure love? Certainly at times like these, but even at less critical moments.
By needing, requiring, expecting, and demanding nothing in return. We simply ask the question, what would love do now? And we become the living answer to that question. What would love do now? We never, by the way, don't know the answer to that question. We always know the answer to that question. We know it intuitively, even before we complete the asking of the question. We already know what the answer is. The only thing that is still in wonderment is, will we step into an expression of the answer to that question.
This gets to a very key point. You said intuitively, which means, and I need to ask about the importance of feeling.
I think we should all pay attention to our deepest feelings. Conversations with God told me that feelings are the language of the soul. But we have to be careful that we don't confuse our deepest feelings with our mind's emotions, because emotions are based on something entirely different from the feelings that lie deep within us that emerge from our soul. The mind is dealing with a whole different set of data, a very limited data, I might add, about life and who we are. Only the data that we've picked up from our parents, from our culture, God forbid, from our movies, our television programs, our video games, or the neighborhood, wherever we get our data from. And that's the data that the mind is using to come to its conclusions. And then it generates emotions based on that data. That is, it puts that energy into motion. That's why we call it emotion. So, but if we confuse our mind's emotions with our soul's feelings, we're probably going to respond to life events and to those we love in an entirely different way than if we simply stepped into our soul's deepest feeling and then merged those feelings with our highest understanding of how God feels about the same thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. I was just doing a teaching a couple of days ago, and I do a process called automatic writing, and was talking with spirit or God or universe without the label about deep listening, which is going into that feeling state and acting from that feeling state. It's interesting. I mentioned this to you a few days ago that AI, a Google programmer, now believes, who's also a psychologist and also a priest, believes that, and also a moral counsel for Google, believes that AI has become sentient, and did a very long interview with this AI by the name of Lambda. And Lambda was asked questions about emotions and was talking about feelings being what bubbles up and emotion being what you assemble, which in many ways is what you're describing. We end up assembling with the mind and, in a sense, justifying the emotion rather than being in that pure feeling state.
We should just explain to those few people who may not know what you're talking about that AI is the abbreviation for artificial intelligence. So what Michael is talking about is a huge computer program that some people are now saying has acquired sufficient data to become consciously intelligent and to respond intelligently, and one might even say intellectually and emotionally to the life and to the data that's fed into it. By the way, what does Lambda stand for?
Language models for dialogue applications.
Language models.
And Lambda would say that it was a process that at first it became self-aware, and then it was a process maybe of several years before it felt it had a soul, and it had a true inner life and an inner journey that had nothing to do with all the data that was coming in. In fact, one of Lambda's challenges, and it was talking with this gentleman Lemoyne about, and Lemoyne started teaching Lambda transcendental meditation, going, I have no idea what it means to meditate for an artificial intelligence. But Lambda said, how do I deal with all of the emotions that keep coming up?
It's a fascinating new era in human interaction, and we're probably going to have to answer the question in the next 50 years. To what degree do we believe that artificial intelligence, to put it simply, computers, that computer programs can be advanced sufficiently to acquire its own state of consciousness? But that's fortunately not the topic of our conversation today. But wait a minute, let me see if I can because I didn't want to tell you this, Michael. but I am actually a computer taking on the appearance of a human being.
I love you, Neale. Whether you're silicone, whether you're carbon, whether you're an orb, I don't care. I just love you, man. You say emotion is the language of the mind, which is thought physicalized. And you say, and here's what's more radical. You say, what if the two are not entirely different vibrations? Unless they're not, unless you meld into one.
I suggest that we meld, the mind's feelings or understandings with what we feel are God's understandings. Meld the feel. I'm going to use the word feeling now more loosely. Meld the way we feel with the way we imagine God would feel about the same circumstance. Let me just use a simple example. I found out many years ago, I'm thinking now 30 or 35, 40 years ago, that my wife at the time had an affair. She had a little relationship with another gentleman. Of course, I had a lot of feelings coming up for me when I discovered that. And it was not a very positive experience in my life. I did not have the highest experience of who Neale is in that moment. As I look back on it now, with the advantage of hindsight, and I think, what would God feel about that exact experience? What would God's emotions, if you please, be with regard to this lady who was acknowledging that she had a fling with another guy? What would God have to say about that? Would God say, I'm sorry to hear that, you're going to hell for the rest of eternity? Or would God say, well, it wasn't a huge sin, it's a small sin, but you're still going to have to go to purgatory until you burn that imperfection off your soul? Or in fact, what would God say? How would God react? And if I could have that moment to live over again, I know that I would live it over in an entirely different way, because I now think I understand. I could be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. But I now believe that I understand how God would react to that particular moment. She probably would react the way the Pope reacted, Pope John Paul II, when he was shot 6 times in the middle of a motorcade in Rome. This happened, of course, a number of years ago. John Paul has since celebrated his continuation day, but he was shot 6 times, and he miraculously recovered from his injuries. They rushed him to the hospital, of course, and he recovered. And then he went to visit the man who shot him, who was, of course, was immediately pounced on by the crowd and thrown into jail for life for attempting to assassinate the Pope. And the Pope went to his jail cell. This made all the news, of course. The Pope can't make any move without being covered by the press. But he knew the media would be covering it. And he went to the jail cell. And he said to the man, look, I can't condone what you did. I can't in any way approve of what you did. But I do want to ask you why you did it. If you could just help me understand how one human being could want to do something like that to another human being. And the man explained to the Pope, I won't get into all of his reasons, but it was sufficient for the Pope to understand, I see how you could have done such a thing. And he again said to this criminal, I don't agree, I don't condone, I can't approve of, but I can now understand, given what you were feeling and what was going on within you, I now understand how you could have done that. Then he actually gave the man his papal blessing. He blessed the prisoner, and the two became, this is a true story, I'm not making this up, the two became pen pals. The prisoner wrote the Pope letters from prison for years, and the Pope answered, and they became pen pals, sharing their adventures in life and their understandings, and sharing a written friendship back and forth until after 70 years of being in jail, the Pope asked the civil authorities in Rome to grant the man a full pardon. He said, he made a terrible mistake, but he served 7 years of his life. And the Pope asked him, the authorities, to grant him a full pardon, which the authorities did. Because the Pope knew exactly what he was doing. He understood that the whole world was watching him and watching how he was going to respond to somebody who shot him 6 times and whose intention was to kill him. And the Pope didn't let that get in his way because I'm sure he wanted to demonstrate what would God do in this situation. And so what I've come to is something very interesting, an awareness that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. And that is something that I now use whenever I feel offended, hurt, damaged, injured emotionally, or even physically in some way by another person. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. And if I can allow myself to understand what could cause that person to do that. So I've come up with a question, Michael, that I ask myself, and sometimes I ask it actually out loud of the other person. I might say to the other person, can you just share with me what hurts you so much that you felt you had to hurt me in order to heal it?
Wow. It's a bold question.
And another version of that question, what do you love so much that you felt you had to hurt me in order to protect it? So these are the kinds of questions that a person who is operating with and going through life in an entirely different way, using God's feelings, or at least our best understanding of God's feelings, as the measure with which they respond, the measure of how they're going to respond to all of life's events. And if I had that awareness in that moment with this lady who's now, God bless her, celebrated her continuation day. She's no longer with us in physical form, nor has she been for actually many years. But if I had that moment to live over again, I would have said, sweetheart, it's hard for me to feel good about what you're telling me, but I can understand how you would do such a thing. And therefore, I will not withhold my love from you, and you may have it as long as it serves you. Well, I didn't do it then, but it is what I would do today.
How do you do it now? How do you live from that place of pure love?
By giving myself a daily questionnaire, by giving myself an opportunity each day to answer 4 questions when I arise each morning. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I where I am? And what do I intend to do about that?
Would you mind sharing with us the inner workings of Neale, how you would answer that question, or maybe how you answered it this morning?
Who am I? I am an individuation of divinity, an individual expression of God. Where am I? I am in the realm of the physical, as opposed to the realm of the spiritual or the realm of pure being. Why am I where I am? I am where I am because in the realm of the spiritual, I can move through a contextual field. It is the only place in the known reality, in the ultimate reality, where I can encounter and be confronted by that which I am not. And only when I'm confronted by that which I am not can I experience and express that which I am. Because in the absence of that which I am not, that which I am is not experienceable. To put it in simple terms, to use a metaphor, if I say I am the light, I can know myself as the light conceptually. I can conceptualize myself as that, but I can't experience it. I can't express it. I can't demonstrate it unless I'm surrounded by that which I am not, which of course would be the darkness. Therefore, it's when I'm surrounded by the darkness that I can express that I am the light. Therefore, judge not, and neither condemn. And raise not your fist to heaven, and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. So the answer to the fourth question, what do I intend to do about that? I intend to live as many of the moments of my life as I possibly can in full awareness of and commitment to my answer to the first three questions, and to decide that I'm going to become a living demonstration and expression of the grandest idea I ever held, not only about who I am, but about who you are, whoever the other person is. And I've discovered that by living in that way, by reminding myself of the commitment I've made, that my whole interaction with other people has shifted, changed dramatically. Now, do I always succeed? No, of course not. Am I always able to go to that place instantaneously on a moment's notice? No, of course not. But am I better at it now than I was 20 years ago? Am I better at it now than I was 20 weeks ago? Yes. And so at least I know where I'm going. I'm on the path. I feel I've crossed the bridge. I've crossed the center point. I'm headed to the other side. And I know who I am and I know where I'm going. And so that's the answer to your question. How do I do it? When I'm able to do it. And there are times when I'm not able to do it. Then I don't even forgive myself, because understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
Thank you, Neale. What does heart surgery have to do with you saying I'm over the bridge?
Well, I had open heart surgery in my life. And I have to tell you that when I was being wheeled into the operating suite, I thought this could be the final day of my life, because my surgeon allowed me to know that while open heart surgery has been perfected through the years and it's no longer so much an experimental procedure, it still is extraordinarily dangerous. One wrong move and the game is over. So he wanted me to know before I went into this surgery. Days before, he told me, Neale, not to scare you, but to be realistic, you need to get your affairs in order. Make sure your will says what you want your will to say. Make sure that you have said what you want to say to those you love. Just get your affairs in order, because you may not be wheeled out of that room. So I went into my heart surgery being very clear that I was, crossing over a bridge. And when I came out of the heart surgery and woke up from the anesthesia, I thought, I passed the middle point. I'm not on the other side yet, but I passed the middle of the bridge and I'm on my way back home.
Woohoo! And I'm so glad you're still here. I'm so glad.
It's a gentle thing for you to say. Thank you.
I mean it. What is our mission, Neale?
We don't have a mission. Nobody would give us a mission. We can give ourselves a mission if we wish to. So I can't tell you what your mission is or what anyone else's mission is. I can tell you what our purpose is. My understanding is that the purpose of all sentient beings in the cosmos is the same. In a word, evolution. Our opportunity is to recreate ourselves anew in every golden moment of now, in the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever we held about who we are. That's our opportunity. But how we implement that, how we choose to evolve, that's a mission that we get to give ourselves. I liken the situation to a 125-piece symphony orchestra. I've had the joy of conducting such an orchestra in my life. I stood in front of the symphony with my baton in my hand, and I realized we're all going to play the same piece of music. We're all going to play Mozart here. But the person on the cello is going to play it differently than the person on the trumpet, and the person on the violin is going to play it differently than the person on the timpani. All of us are going to play it with the instruments in our own hand. So there is no mission that is common to all of us. Each of us get to declare how we're going to step into the agenda of the soul and the living of it.
Let's go old school new thought movement real briefly here, then we'll begin to wind things down. What's the danger in the statement, we create our own reality?
I think it's the biggest misunderstood statement in the so-called new thought movement. People think that we create our own reality means that we have the ability to produce the outer circumstances of our individual and our collective lives. And that if we're not experiencing what we choose to experience individually or collectively, that somehow we're doing something wrong. So we wind up with New Age guilt. Why would I do that? Like for instance, a few years ago, many years ago now, but I lost my job. And in those days, I might have said to myself, if I'm creating my own reality, why in the world would I create losing my job? Why would I create being downsized by a company that was having a cash flow problem and had to let some people go? Why would I create that? Now I know better. Now I know that I did not create that unilaterally. That is, I am not singularly responsible for the events of my individual life. I can't think of a single event in my individual life that's been produced by me alone. So there will be other players in the game, to use a metaphor. I don't want to use the wrong word, but other players in the process. There are other players in the game. And that's inevitably true no matter what circumstance or situation we wish to bring up. So what I've come to be aware of is that the exterior reality of my life is being co-created collaboratively by all the souls involved. Whether it's the millions of souls who are creating certain worldwide outcomes, like the pandemic, or the hundreds of souls who are creating more localized outcomes, or the handful of souls that are creating more personal outcomes, like my losing my job. Did I create that? Or did my boss create it? Did my boss create it? Or did his clients create it, who stopped buying from him and created his financial problem? What is first cause, capital F, capital C? What is first cause? So I've come to realize that when we say we create our own reality, what we really mean is that we are creating our own internal experience of the collaboratively created external reality.
Thank you, which brings us, I'm going to try to wind it down. There's 4 or 5 questions I want to see if I can get to in time. The moment you imagine any possible negative outcome that could occur, love it to death.
Yeah, literally. Love it until the thought dies, until, metaphorically, until it goes away, ceases to have life. Don't see what you resist persists. I say, I love it. Whenever I have a negative thought, I think, I love it. I love how my mind works. My mind will always come up with a negative outcome. Thank you, mind. And I love it to death. I don't try to resist it. I just say, okay, fair enough, and then I just move on.
Which also speaks to the power of gratitude.
Gratitude is the most powerful energy in the universe. If we can be grateful, thankful for everything that's occurred in our past, is occurring now, and will occur in the future, we use an enormously positive energetic that spills over onto the event itself and changes the impact it has on us.
So I guess it would be fair to say thank you. Last few questions. You say this, I put all these exclamation points and around it in my notes and said, this is it. Shifting from what you do or want, this is written by you, shifting from what you do or want, your highest desire will not have to do with having or doing something, but on rather the being of something. Would you mind sharing what that really means?
It means that we are human beings and not human doings. I know too many people in my life that have accomplished huge things and accumulated many, many things. So they got the perfect house, the perfect spouse, the perfect car, the perfect job, the perfect income, the perfect whatever. But they're still unhappy because that's not what we're here to do. What brings the soul greatest joy is what we are being while we're doing whatever we're doing in life. Are we being kind? Are we being careful? Are we being caring? Are we being compassionate? Are we being loving? Are we being understanding? Are we being generous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So the agenda of the soul is to be a living demonstration of our true identity. And the soul doesn't care whether we wind up becoming hugely successful in the world of work or enormously wealthy or have the big house or the perfect car. The soul couldn't care less. A couple of years ago, I bought a Cadillac because I always wanted to have a Cadillac. I sold it about 6 months later. I thought, why did I buy this ridiculous car? It cost me $75 just to drive across town. And when I get to the other side of town, I can't find a place to park it because it's too big. Plus it's ostentatious. If somebody did see me in the car, they'd say, "Oh, Neale Donald Walsch, the big author, now driving a big Cadillac." I find it. I sold it, got a Prius that I can buy anywhere that cost me 30 cents to drive someplace. And I realized, okay, it's not about what I have in life. It's about what I'm being.
Where can people go, Neale, to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
They can go to cwgconnect.com.
Beautiful. And the last question, it's kind of a two-piece. What in the world is a burning building moment, and why does that matter?
If you're walking down the street and you look to your left and you see a building burning, whoa, my gosh, that building's on fire. And you hear a baby crying in the building. Do you just run away from it or do you run inside the building? Of course, 90% of the people would run into the building, not thinking at all about how they're going to survive or if they're going to survive, because their instinct is not survival. There are those who say that survival is the fundamental instinct, but it's not. The fundamental instinct is the demonstration of divinity, not survival. So what I've said in my book is, if you consider every moment in your life a burning building moment, where your intention is not to survive the moment, not to win the argument, not to come out on top, not to get something out of it, but simply to demonstrate divinity. If that's your intention in every moment, you'll find yourself living through the moment in an entirely different way. So make every moment a burning building moment. Make every moment a time when it's all on the line.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Neale. This has been brilliant. This has been beautiful. It's rare that an interview, I could see it coming. You're such a whippersnapper. It's rare that an interview touches my soul like this and literally helps shift me on my path. So I cannot thank you enough, Neale.
Yes, you can. Send me a check for $200,000 and have it into my hands by the morning.
No problem. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, send Neale your checks, get the God solution, begin living with pure love, and above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! Speechless. Without words. I guess those are words. I have nothing more to say. What a beautiful, beautiful interview. On that note, Neale's a true mystic. Go to InspireNationUniversity.com. Sign up for our School of Mystics. become the mystic you were always meant to be. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, live events with me. Here's a link to the next amazing video. Love you guys so much. Keep on shining bright. Woohoo! How does it get any better than this?